Hey guys, welcome to the Leading Edge Cricket Podcast, a podcast bringing people exactly what they want and that no one has asked for. Today, it's not just the Rich and Rob show. The podcast is bolstered by the biggest Warwickshire fan, the biggest celebrating Warwickshire fan that I've ever met, the county championship, the Bob Willis Trophy, that time that Dermot Reeve won something back in the 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, we're graced by the legend of Chris Torr. How are we?
Woo! Woo! Welcome, darling. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good
there
to
you
have
go,
you,
man.
mate.
A few words now.
Absolutely.
Talk us through what's on your knee. So for those watching on the podcast, Torley is holding a child bear mascot.
It's the Warwickshire Mascot because the big call out from the fans has always been Hugh Bears. Warwickshire being very clever, marketed it as Hugh Bear.
Hugh Bear.
So come on, Hugh Bears. So
Bears.
that's my Hugh. And he comes to all my games with me.
Oh,
He does.
I'm slightly worried that he's going to like fall asleep sat next to
No,
me.
I'll put Hugh out of the way because he's going to go and play with your cat.
So, hey, it's good that we got him on though, mate. We
Yep.
had to, didn't we? After the championship winning and Bob Willis Trophy.
Well, I was a bit disappointed with your predictions at the start of the season. I think I might have told you, Rich, that you didn't consider Warwickshire.
Did we not?
No, you said that or thereabouts.
Well, there you go. That sounds good then. That means a length. That means on a length to me, there or thereabouts. So
Fair
I
enough.
feel like we were right.
So what went right with Warwickshire this year, Torley? Because it's first time since 2012 they won the championship. What's changed other than you had Dom Sibley crucially back for the last few games of the season? What changed as a whole in this Warwickshire team? Why did they win?
Well, Simba's actually played 9 games, so it wasn't just the end of the season. I think what's changed is new young captain, a couple of really good acquisitions that came in. One thing Warwickshire have done really, really successfully is pick up players that other counties didn't seem that bothered with. Bresnan, Briggs, Norwell, Miles, all of them have come to the party. So whoever's on the selection at Warwickshire has excelled because they brought in brilliant team players. Also, people like Norwell couldn't play last year. They were injured. You know, it didn't work out. We didn't have Briggs. But there seems to be a real change. We've got a brilliant mixture of some experience with Briggs and Bresnan in the bowling department. And then you look at the batting lineup, everyone's under 26 in the top 6. It's a really young side. They're going to be around for a long time. So it's quite exciting.
Not good news for Notts fans. And I'm pretty sure you guys did the double over Notts this year, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I think that actually was the most important game of the year for us, actually, with that first win at Notts, when we really didn't deserve to win it.
Yeah.
Gave them spirit. And one thing Warwickshire have done really well compared to other teams this year is they've stayed in games for 4 days and then come strong at the end and won games. A lot of other teams have folded, but Warwickshire have been pretty good at bowling teams out on flat decks and working very hard, which, you know, it's just an attitude thing, I think. And a lot of the players have said something like Tim Bresman has basically said, no, we're still in it.
Yeah.
And it's having that belief from some of the senior players, you know, Paul Farbrace. They've got a new manager in Robinson who's been there, done it, knows what to do. And it just seems that there's an attitude to win.
Yeah, and that's Mark Robinson, isn't it? Who was in charge of the women, the ladies, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The England women's team. And so Warwickshire, they pulled forward 21 points because they beat Notts twice, basically. So that was half of the points that they'd accumulated in the first group. So that's 21 points instead of 42. Notts only brought through 5, which is a massive difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons Warwickshire, it helped them get up to the top of the table to win. It was some way, though, that they won it, didn't it, Rob? You must have seen it. You know, Lancashire thought that they had it. 1 wicket win against Hampshire, last number 11 into bat.
Yeah.
Matt Parkinson comes in. Luckily, he's at the non-strikers, so Dane Villas can quickly just kind of get a couple of runs just to get them over the line. Big celebrations for Lancashire, thinking that they've done it. And then Warwickshire, as Chris said, or will say, no doubt, is they kept taking games to 4 days. So Lancashire won inside 3 days. Warwickshire took it down to the 4th day, and they skittled Somerset on day 4, which was what it was all about in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
One of the big things I've noticed as well in this season, he's come from the background. But you had Will Rhodes a few years ago, who we said potential opener, but now he's sitting in the middle order as captain, a bit of an all-rounder as well, someone to be looking at. Sibley obviously was there with England, but now Rob Yates has come through, a young opener.
Yeah.
22-year-old. We're always looking at openers, aren't we? What's he all about?
Young lad from Warwick School. Fantastic player, brilliant temperament, no trigger movement, very old school.
Oh, amazing.
Stand and deliver. It's beautiful to watch because it's just simple. It's like watching a Mead. When you see Mead back for England after watching the other openers, you just sit there and think, he's going to get runs.
Yeah.
There's a confidence that you have.
Yeah.
Yates is exactly that and more. It's quite intriguing. There was a wonderful quote on a Twitter feed when someone was asking if Sibley will get back in, and a lot of Warwickshire fans replied, "He's not even the best opener of Warwickshire." Why should he get back in?
I was just about to ask actually, what's the thoughts on Sibley, because everyone knows what my thoughts on Sibley is. So, that's interesting to know. Say that again, Rob.
Pretty strong with them, mate. With the Sibley, we very direct, very down the line. He's not been good enough for a long time.
Fair though.
He can't hit the ball, 180 degrees of the pitch, so he's limiting himself.
I think what's interesting, I mean, if you watch any of him playing in the county championship, it shows you the different skill level that when you go to test match. Because Sibley and county championships is getting the loose ball outside of stump and putting it away. On the game where we had to set up runs quickly on that fourth day, Sibley's reverse sweeping. He is slog sweeping for six.
Yeah. So it begs the question.
He can do it, but I think the reality is, can he do it consistently against someone that's bowling fourth stump line over and over and over again? And he didn't really have a game plan for that.
I thought Tolly was going to say, can he do it at Rochdale on a Tuesday night?
No.
Keith Barker would have him every day of the week.
No, don't. We should never have let him go.
No. So that's interesting to know, isn't it, really, about Sibley? Did you want to bring something in there, or I'll quickly surmise what happened in the Bob Willis Trophy final, if you want?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on Rob Yates, because he's 22. He's left-handed, which is a good commodity to have in your team. But it's not what runs you've scored on the season for me. You look at some guys, they'll start off hot, they'll score almost 1,000 runs before May, and you're like, this guy's the next big cheese that's going to sit on the shelf at Morrison's. It's not the case. It's when you score your runs that's imperative. And I look at Rob Yates, and he scored 77 against Hampshire, 132 not out against Somerset in that game to win the championship, and then 113 in the soon-to-be talked-about Bob Willis Trophy final. That's 22 years old going and doing it.
Yeah.
That's not normal to have that level of ability and composure at the big stage.
Interesting stat for you here, Bob. Before the Bob Willis Trophy final, he'd got past into double figures 11 times. He'd hit 400s.
Wow.
Basically, when he gets in, he goes big. So he's one of those players.
Yeah, 500s for him in the summer. Joe Clark back in 2016 was the last man to do that, under 22. So he's clearly got some talent. We're in an interesting situation. Rob Yates, not going to talk about it now, but Rob Yates, Tom Haynes. There's two up-and-coming young openers. Tom Haynes down at Sussex. I think he's 21, 22 as well. He's the leading run scorer in county cricket this year, ahead of the likes of David Bedingham and others. So we're suddenly back into that position where a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks, maybe a month or two ago, was thinking, Christ, where's the next opener coming from? There's currently a couple more just hanging around. And it would not surprise me if one of Yates or Haynes gets on a plane to Australia, if anyone gets on a plane to Australia. We shall see. Wow. But let's quickly just get people up to date. For those who have not been paying attention, Bob Willis Trophy final was basically the winner and the runner-up from Division 1. So it was Warwickshire who won the league, 77, Lancashire, 73.5 points, half a point ahead of Nottinghamshire. They'll be ruining it. They were 4 runs short of an extra bonus point in the last game of the season. So they've only got themselves to blame. But considering the Ants won in 1,000 days, I think it was, in red ball cricket, not have had an exceptional summer. But basically, Bob Willis Trophy final, Warwickshire won by an innings and 199 runs. I think that's called a spanking, isn't it? Probably don't want to use that word too much on the internet, but it was a convincing result. Lancashire lost it on day one, though, didn't they? 78 all out. Luke Wood, only man showing resistance with an unbeaten 46. It was 6 for 12 inside 9 overs. Chief destroyer for the Bears, Craig Miles, 5 for 28, and then Liam Norwell.
It's Norwell, but we say Norwell.
Yeah, there's a village around here called Norwell, but it's Norwell. 2 for 9 off 6 as well. Debutant Manraj Jahal, not a bad place to make your debut, is it? The Bob Willis Trophy final, he got 2 for 9 as well. Warwickshire just went massive after that. They matched the Lancashire total in 20 overs, and then, away they go, basically. Dom Sibley, Sam Hain, 50s. As we spoke about, Rob Yates even got his 113. 518 they finished on. Will Rhodes top scored 156, though. Decent game, really. 4 wickets for Australian tourist hopeful Matt Parkinson for Lancashire. Somebody I think now that Moeen Ali is moving on, that we might need to be speaking a bit more about. He got 4 for 78. F6, they improved to 241. George Bolton hit 65 in the 4th innings, but it wasn't enough. Liam Norah again 3 for 60. Danny Briggs 3 for 58. Dismissed them, 199 run deficit for an innings. So convincing as convincing can be. It's Warwickshire's summer. The rest of us were just here, just taking part.
It was. How does it feel, Torley?
Time. They need more of this.
Yeah, he's a happy man. He's a happy man. So yeah, was there anything that surprised you about this Warwickshire team just before we move on?
Yeah, I was thinking that Warwickshire were going to do well on the basis of 2 bowlers that have been injured. You forget Henry Brooks unavailable all season. Ollie Stone pretty much unavailable all season. Yeah. Both very quick, good wicket takers, and we hadn't seen much of Norwell. He was injured the season before, and Miles weren't quite sure where he was going to sit in the mix. Yeah, Hannon Dolby as well didn't. He ended up being injured. I mean, there were times where it was a bit of a threadbare attack. Actually, they did surprisingly well. So, that's what chuffed me the most. Yeah,
Will Rhodes has bowled a lot of overs as well, considering a few years ago you wouldn't have said he was anything other than a batsman, potentially, would you? Or
He's always bowled a bit.
Yeah.
He's when conditions are right. Yeah. He's a bit one of those batsmen that can come on, swing a ball or keep it tight. But he's worked hard on his game and improved massively. But
so no, Red Bull summer. It was a good summer. We obviously had the YouTube feeds, which was absolutely fantastic. I'm sure everyone will agree. Division 2 Essex finished top. They've just pipped Gloucestershire by 20 points. Beat them in the last game of the season. Surrey Glamorgan. I don't want to go into this, but what a ridiculous game this was to finish summer out with. 10 wickets in this game and only 2 innings. 672 for 6 for Glamorgan, and then followed by 722 for 4 for Surrey. You're just showing off, lads. Chris Cook, 205 not out, the wicketkeeper captain. Love that star and square, asterisk, whatever you call it. So used to rattle Rob, didn't like to see them both on the same name. And then, Ollie Pope, when he goes big, doesn't he? He was skipper in the side, hit 274, Hashim Amla 163. And a player I've got a lot of time for and a lot of excitement about, 21-year-old Jamie Smith, he opened in this game, 138 for Surrey. I think he's somebody that could be a real surprise. It could be a surprise inclusion over the winter, depending on what happens with the wicket keepers, because he can keep wicket as well. But yeah, Ben Folkes back as well, 53 not out. So that's just something for the England fans to follow. And I also want to mention this game because as time was called, it was Ricky Clark who was at the crease. So a nice end for him now. He's retiring, an ex-England international. Can't call him an England legend, but we'll call him a county legend.
Warwickshire legend.
Exactly, yeah.
I felt sorry for him, though, because he had to come out to bat and face
Chris Cook.
Yeah,
the wicketkeeper.
The wicketkeeper, captain.
Yeah, there's not many times you'll get all 11 players bowling in that game, but I think that's what it deserved on that track. But just wrapping things up as well, Kent absolutely had a disaster of the first half of the season, but they ended up T20 winners and Division 3 champions as well. A relatively young team hit hard by COVID, so they've done that absolutely amazing. Sussex finished bottom. They had a really, really tough end to the season, but considering that most of the players had to get permission slips from school to come and play, I think they've done pretty well. They're going to be a team that's going to be there or thereabouts in whatever competition next year. So excited to see how they do. It's been awards season as well, Rob. Do you want to know who did what?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Well, the PCA Player of the Year finally was David Bellingham, the South African at Durham, who nearly scored 1,000 runs before the break. Tailed off a bit towards the end, didn't he? But he still had an exceptional summer. Simon Harmer always has a great summer. Luke Fletcher, leading wicket taker, what a ledge. But Joe Root was the winner, and I don't think you can look past Joe Root for the summer he's had. Yeah. Anyone want to comment on Joe Root? I think
every time I talk about Joe Root's 2021, I keep saying, and Torley will appreciate this, It's the second greatest English summer of all time, or English calendar season as a batsman. The best one, Ian Bell, 2011, the best. Average 120. His average is higher than the overall average of a top 7 player in an England team since 2000. He was incredible. Runs against Sri Lanka, runs against Australia. That's Ian Bell. That's not Joe Root. Joe Root's doing very well. He's not quite as good as Ian Bell 2011.
Very true, very true. What I really enjoyed the last couple of days as well, Barmy Army Twitter basically tweeted that Joe Root has almost scored as many runs this year as Tim Paine, the Australian captain, has scored in his Test career.
I'll see it, the Gaba.
No, it was so good though, because Australians, they love a bit of banter and they never get rotten when things get thrown back at them. They didn't like that at all. The toys came out the pram on that one. The fishing rod emoji was well in use by the Barmy Army on that one, so I quite enjoyed it. But moving on swiftly, MVP, very Americanized, but it's PCA County Championship final rankings. Simon Harmer, he finished in 3rd place. Darren Stevens, a 47-year-old, 45-year-old. What a man. He finished 2nd, but it was Luke Fletcher that got it, and rightly so. The big man from Nottinghamshire, the local boy, he got it. I'm chuffed to bits with that. I think he's been exceptional for Notts for years, and I'm a little bit surprised with how well he's done this year. But leading wicket taker, I think, was 67 wickets. Just sensational.
Great. He's a spearhead now, isn't he? He's of that age, that ilk, that experience. He's had his times he's done well at Notts. He's had his times he's gone out on loan to other teams to get cricket. There was a time everyone thought he was one of the best white ball Yorker bowlers in the country. And came out to play for Wellington out here. But the fact is, he's missed the consistent. And when Matt Milnes, who's now of Kent but was at Notts, was talking about Nottinghamshire bowling attack and why he couldn't get a game and he had to go elsewhere, he says, because I'd watch Luke Fletcher bowl in the nets, hit the top of off stump up all day, do it, nip it both ways. And he's like, I can't do that. I need to go and get better somewhere else before I can start to play with the quality of Luke Fletcher.
Yeah. And what summer he's had, Matt Milnes, talk about that, had huge impact in the T20 campaign in the finals day and pushing towards their victory, as well as in the red ball. Jack Blatherwick as well, just talking about ex-Notts players very, very briefly. He's another one at Lancashire. He got himself in the team at the end of the season, was taking wickets and catching the eye of some very well-known commentators and what have you. So, yeah, there's a lot of good young players coming through again in English cricket. And it's we seem to have just hit that little sort of lull of the young players that are ready for international cricket and the young players that, just on the way back up again. And we're just at that point, aren't we? We're going to just have a quick look at the PCA Team of the Year. And there's a few in here, the likes of Harry Brook, spoiler alert. The young players, but they're not far off again.
Yeah. So
we're nearly at that point where these young players are ready to, not rather than tapping on the door or ringing the doorbell, they're ready to kick it through, aren't they? So PCA Team of the Year, it's a tale of two openers, really. Jake Libby, late 20s, came to the first class game a little bit late over at Worcestershire. He's 1,000 runs a season, man, lock on, isn't he? And Tom Haynes at Sussex, actually 1 and 2. Anyone want to throw anything in on either of those boys?
Well, Libby's done really well. He's done very well. But again, just look at Worcester's tracks early season. They were stupid.
Yeah.
They were 700 plays 700 every week.
Yeah.
Which obviously helped with his average. But, can't take it away. He's still got to score him.
Definitely. Middle order, I'm going to throw the three together here. Ricardo Vasconcellos, the most rewarding saying name in county cricket. Big fan of that. Northamptonshire wicket-keeper batsman. He's in an exceptional time of it. I'm really delighted that he's got the credit he deserves for this PCA Team of the Year, and he's in there at 3. David Bedingham of Durham, as we spoke about, and Harry Brook of Yorkshire. Rob?
Vasconcellos, like you said, exceptional name. He was the start of the season for me. It was about week 2 or week 3. And at that stage, the county championship was so interesting before they started to put an 8-week gap in between games. Don't get me started on that. But he was exceptional. And there was one game, and I think he got about 100, 150 not out to win them the game. Absolutely incredible. But it's not the runs he scored, it's how he went about it. He was absolutely dominating, likes to go at the bowlers, likes to hit the ball hard. That's why when you say, he scored 1,500 runs in all competitions rather than going, he got 1,000 in the championship, it's how he goes about playing the game and the impact he has across multi-format that makes him a bit of a game changer and potentially a couple of years down the road, maybe England eligible.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'd love to see that, to be honest with you. He's just one of the players, and he's a wicket keeper as well. There's so many players out there that
Aren't they all?
Yeah, but we've spoke about this a lot, Solid. On England wicket keepers are all sneaky old.
They are.
Bairstow and Butler are both pushing. Well, they're over 30. Folkes is probably the youngest. Was he about 27 now? Something like that. So nobody's like a young pup anymore. So there's going to be space in this setup at some point for a young up and coming keeper. So I'm interested to see it. One name that I'm really delighted as well that PCA Team of the Year got in there. When the Cricketer did theirs, they did a mid-season one, and this guy, Matt Critchley of Derbyshire, was in there at number 6. He was scoring runs for fun, and he's a leggy as well. He's a young fella. He's only probably like 22, 23, taking wickets as well. He's finished the summer. He finished strong, actually. He got over 1,000 runs. If he wasn't playing for Derbyshire, his name would be known by every cricket fan in this country, and he'd be being penciled in or even penned into every Ashes squad. Now we've lost Ben Stokes, because Ben Stokes has had an operation on his finger. It's probably just worth mentioning at this point. Very, very unlikely to be part of an Ashes squad. Moeen Ali is now retired. He gave you the balance as the batting, bowling all-rounder. Where do you go to get that balance in the team, in the test side? Matt Critchley has to be part of that conversation, surely.
Yeah.
You can have him as part of your conversation. I'm all for.
But who else is going to give us that? Who's going to give me that balance in the team? The Moeen Ali, Ben Stokes balance.
Well, I was looking to see what John Embry was doing. He could do a job for us. But my problem is, and it comes down to how poor the England top 6 is. I'm going off on tangent, but the England top 6 is poor, which means you have to find a replacement for Ben Stokes and Moeen Ali, because you can't just have a standard team. You need people that give you additional batting. Critchley would give that. My problem is Critchley's played 0 international cricket. He's good. But he's a leg spinner, and we know how hard it is for leg spinners going and playing Test cricket.
But he's not going to be in your team as your main spinner. That's the point, isn't it? He's you don't really need 2 spinners on the sub in Australia, sorry, but it gives you that balance of a batsman and who can offer some overs with the ball as well. I think that's going to be the problem, is finding someone. We will not replace Moeen Ali in the respect of he can be a frontline spin bowler, but he's also a top 6 batsman. We haven't got that, have we? Unless somebody's out there that I'm not aware of. The only player that's anywhere near Moeen Ali is Critchley. Yes, he's untested. Is he good enough as a bowler? I don't know at the moment. Probably not in the test format, obviously, and as a leg spinner, like you say, in Australia. Yeah, they've ruined a few over there, haven't they? But just somebody that can do a little bit of both. I'm really struggling to find a player. Sam Curran is having some trouble with his back at the moment, so it looks unlikely he'll be touring over the winter. So you start looking around. Chris Woakes is as close as we've got to an all-rounder. Absolutely. And I'm not sure I can bat him at 6, but then you could have your wicketkeeper at 6. But anyway, we're getting past it. But I just need to know who else is out there that could potentially fill that role. And Critchley is one of the only ones I can genuinely think of. Although, in the PCA Team of the Year at number 7, Darren Stevens.
He's your man.
Talking of all-rounders.
He's your man. Get him in.
Sign him up. All-rounders.
Not going to happen.
He's a young boy. He's fine. He's only a couple of years older than me. So we'll get into him in a second. But running through the bowlers, Simon Harmer of Essex speaks for itself. Craig Overton of Somerset, exceptional start to the season before he got his England recognition. Luke Fletcher, clearly obvious for that. And Sam Cook finished, I think, 2nd leading wicket taker, pretty much joint with Chris Rushworth. Easy for me to say. Yes, he did. 58 wickets, just one behind Rushworth is 59. Rushworth, a little bit disappointed, I'm sure, not to get in the team. But Sam Cook, little chef of Essex, deservedly in there as well. So, there's your bowling and all-rounders, boys. Yeah.
Harmer. When does Harmer become England qualified? That has got to be the question. And does he want to?
Yeah, we spoke about this. I think he was very close. I spoke to someone recently about this. And it might just be hearsay, it might not be fact. But I heard that he was pretty much on the verge of becoming English qualified until Brexit. And then it's actually complicated things with his status now. So I don't think he can now become, or it's a different situation anyway. And I'm not sure if it's straightforward for him anymore to qualify. So I'm not going to say anything else about the B word, as we try and avoid it as much as we can. But yay, another benefit. It would have been great to have him in this England team, and he could have batted probably 9, potentially. Woakes at 8, keeper at 7. Suddenly looks a hell of a team, doesn't it? No disrespect to the likes of Jack Leach and Matt Parkinson, etc. But there's one consistent with some of this other spinners that we'll talk about is that they're all just bowlers. They're not batters.
Yeah. You got to offer a few different things in the game these days. You can't just be can't be one or the other. I'm quite happy to see Sam Cook in this team, though, mate. And I think this is what I really like about the PCA Team of the Year. It's not picking your championship team of the year. It's picking the guys who have kind of either superbly excelled at one format or have done well across them all and add value. And you can see that with Sam Cook. Third most bowling MVP points, third most blast wickets, shortlisted for the Young Player of the Year. He's been great, and he's got better throughout the summer, because at the start of the summer, that Essex bowling lineup was pretty poor, and they were struggling to take wickets, even with Harmer. And when we did the preview at the start, we was like, wow, this Essex bowling attack is absolutely magnificent. But it took him time to get going, and it's amazing that he's been the spearhead at that age.
Yeah, no, big time. And Jamie Porter, what's happened to Jamie Porter? I mean, he is still there and taking wickets, but it wasn't long ago that he was pulling on an England shirt. People were banging the door down because he was taking so many wickets every year, wasn't he? So just something I just need to correct myself on as well, actually, or an omission, apologies. Harry Brook was the PCA Young Player of the Year, wasn't he? As well. So I forgot to give him his fair dues there. So Harry Brook, like I say, he's about 22, another player that could easily see himself flying over to Australia this winter. Sam Cook, quality. Anybody else that could have been in with a shout? I mean, the Cricketer did a team where I'll just rattle through it very quickly, and then if there's anything you want to pick out. But they went with Tom Haynes, Sussex, opening with Rob Yates of Warwickshire, Josh Bohannon, Lancashire, 853 runs, David Bedingham, obviously Durham, Ben Brown was the wicketkeeper, Sussex. Now, he wasn't in the team start of the year, lost the captaincy, came back and scored nearly 1,000 runs. I don't know how this guy hasn't got near England at some point over his career. He's been an exceptional batter. I mean, top 4 player and a wicketkeeper, but he just obviously wasn't the flavour. Matt Critchley, Darren Stevens, Saruman Harmer, Luke Fletcher, Sam Cook, but also Tom Bailey of Lancashire, they had in their team. So the differences there: Bailey, Bohannon, Brown, and Yates.
Where's Rushworth? What's Chris Rushworth?
I don't know what he's done wrong.
I had a boring moment, and I did my team, and I had Rushworth in there. My 4 bowls were Harmer, Rushworth, Fletcher, and Cook.
Can't go wrong.
I think so as well. I also had a certain Hashim Amla at number 3. I'm sorry, overlooked. Hashim Amla, he scored a lot of runs this year. Looking in the wickets column is not going to help me, though, is it? He scored 994 runs in the end.
That's not bad, because he did have a really poor, slow start.
He did, but he also did 2 things. He scored big towards the end of the year, but he also had that innings, which saved the game, I believe it was, where he basically just dropped anchor, and didn't score a run. He basically channeled his inner Dom Sibley and anchored down. But yeah, that's someone I chucked in there as well. I thought it's interesting just to have a little exercise of just who I would have in that team. But yeah, there's been some exceptional performances this year, and it's not been a bad summer. The format clearly needs to change. The ECB still hasn't got its head around how they're going to do that next summer. Notts saved some blushes, because if Notts had gone on and won the league and become county championship, if they'd gone back to a two-tier system, Notts would have ended up as champions in Division 2. Wow. Because that's where they should have been before COVID struck and before this restructure came in. So they've saved some blushes, and I think the talk is that this might go on for one more summer.
I think
I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, they're going to look at conference again for another season, and then they're going to use that to go into two divisions.
Yeah,
they're looking at going for 10 in the first division and 8 in the second.
Yeah,
which I think is the wrong way of doing it. Personally, I'd rather have 8 in the first.
8 and 10.
Yeah,
well, I think that's what they were thinking of doing, which is why Notts would have gone down, wouldn't it? It would have been 1 go down and 3 come up. Yeah. Oh no, that was in the 10-8, sorry, isn't it? Yeah. So who knows what it'll be? The ECB doesn't know what it's doing half the time. Increasing calls at the moment from people writing articles just saying, is ECB fit for purpose? It's been around for 30 odd years. It replaced an entity that was previously around for 30 odd years before that. It's a corporation. It's a it feels like an LTD, doesn't it? It's not really fit for what the game's all about. The ECB came about in trying to monetize the game. It's done that very well. It now needs to look in the other direction, and I think it needs to be almost seen like a charity in some respects. But it needs to get away from this corporate entity that's paying 2.1 million to its executives, at a time when 60 odd staff have been stepped down and counties are struggling for funding. So it's not fit for purpose, in my opinion. But that's another conversation.
It's a great conversation. It feels like Tawley's biting his lip there, ready to say something about it.
Go Tawley, go Tawley.
Don't get me started.
My question, you say the county championship format needs to change. Does the county championship format needs to change? And I'm going to put a few positives on this. One, I thought the initial group stages were fantastic. Having groups of 6 and meaningful games in that, I thought was really good. I haven't got the full solution, but I don't feel going back to a standard. I felt there was better cricket played and more meaningful games played and quality games played. Leicestershire were playing against good teams rather than all those Leicestershire players playing against, not Joe Bloggs, it's a derogatory way to put it, but against lesser players, against Division 2 players. If you had it, and create rivalries with teams that mean something in this kind of conference play before they go on to the next stage. I'm not sure how the next stage works yet.
It's not been thought through completely yet, but I agree with you. The first stage of this, the 3 groups of 6, where every single team have a chance to win the county championship and progress then to the Bob Willis Trophy final, was a great setup. It's fantastic. The fact that in the first time in years, Leicestershire or Derbyshire or whatever have a chance to win the county championship. They're not in Division 2. They don't have to win Division 2 and then go up for the county championship. So every team had a chance, and I really, really like that. Cream rose to the top in the group stages, and then it progressed. The problem then came, and I don't have a solution. If I did, I'd be going to the ECB and saying, "Give me some of that 2.1 million you're dishing out." But it's the gap in between, and then it's what you do with the second half, because Division 2 and Division 3, the Essex and Kent one respectively. With all due respect to all those counties, those 12 counties down there, no one gave a crap.
No. It
was just about Division 1. So at the end of the season, you lost 12 counties, basically. It became a 6-county competition. So the first part of it was fantastic. Second part of it, absolute garbage to a certain degree. That's my take on it. I don't know where they go.
No, I totally agree. The first half was fantastic. All the games on at the same time. You could live stream from one to the other. It was like football on a Saturday. You know, it was all happening. It was all there. You could see how your team was faring in the championship. Not like years back where one team had played 8 games, the other had played 5. You got no concept of what was going on.
I hate that.
And then there was that break, and then all of a sudden we have it. Now we were fortunate that actually the top flight division at the end was nip and tuck all the way. I mean, it was really exciting. But well done, Essex, for coming 7th. You know, I mean, they've won, but they've come 7th. You know, I mean, it's just it's pointless.
It is bizarre. It is actually that's a fair way of putting it. The team that won Division 2 is actually just well done for coming 7th.
So why couldn't you go? And this is completely hypothetical, and I'll try not to take much time. Have the initial group stage, but the initial group stage is built out with more games. So you play your teams in your group twice or whatever it is, and then you play some out of conference games against some other teams, and everyone plays an equal amount of games. Top one from each thing goes into a playoff plus 1 wild card, and you end up with 4 teams that go and play meaningful cricket to win the championship at the end, or the Bob Willis Trophy, or whatever it is. And
it's tricky because the first phase you did play each other twice. So there's 10 games played in the first phase. So then it becomes quite tricky of how you would then incorporate more games into that, because then you might be playing just a couple of those counties or a few of those counties one more time. So it gets a bit weird, doesn't it? It comes back to a strange number of counties, 18 counties.
It's too many.
I'm not going to
say that.
No, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to start saying it has to change like that, but it's not a perfect system from the start. And then you're trying to create a system from that starting point. You're never going to create a perfect system. So, hey, it is what it is. Like we say, ECB, it's up to them to sort this out. It's interesting. A few people have made some suggestions, but I've not seen one that really hits and says, yes, that's it. But I think that's one of the reasons we've had a change at the ECB, though. Which is what we want to get onto just briefly now, is that the chair has stepped down as Ian Watmore. He's left after just about 13 months of a 5-year term. That's obviously something's gone very, very wrong. It says mutual agreement. That just means that they've agreed a payoff, basically, because they've got all that money sat there not being spent where it needs to be spent. I'm not going to go on to him. From the sounds of it, you listen to people like George Doble and others, Watmore seems to have been a decent bloke. Personally decent bloke, but he's not. And he's had a very tough time of it as well in the last 13 months. Let's put it that way as well. But with the Pakistan fiasco. There's no other way of putting it. The disgraceful way Pakistan Cricket Board have been treated by the ECB. You know, and it wasn't just the decision, it was the fact that nobody came out and defended the decision or explained the decision. They put a statement out and then hid.
Yeah.
And that is not how you manage. If you're a 63-year-old chairman of the England and Wales Cricket Board, you have got to put yourself forward. He'll be earning a nice chunk of money.
1.2 million.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, this guy needs to step forward and do something, doesn't he? So I'm not really too bothered about who's going to be stepping in, etc., and what more was.
I am.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just a temporary one at the moment. But I don't know where we come back to that same conversation. Where does ECB go from here? It just seems to be chasing its tail at the moment. It seems to be putting out fires that it's creating itself, and then not really going anywhere, not really improving anything. The only thing they've done really that they've introduced this year is the 100. And really, when we look at the summer, the whole reason the summer was kind of disjointed is because they tried to plonk the 100 in the slap bang in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But hey, there it is. Go on, Solly, what you got, mate?
Well, Invisible Ian has got a bit of previous because he was chief executive of the Football Association, disappeared in under a year of that as well.
Yeah, he likes his payoffs, doesn't he?
Well, I do feel sorry for him. He took on when it wasn't COVID, and obviously he was the first paid member as well by the ECB to do that job. And he's come in, and then COVID's ravaged it, and everything's gone a bit up in the air. Now, what happened to Pakistan is disgusting. And it just looks like we've monetised cricket and we can play certain teams and not others. I'm sorry, but cricket tours are run on political capital. We cannot afford to run out of ours. You know, other teams, West Indies, Pakistan, they've come over here when times were really hard. We didn't have vaccinations and everything. And we owe them big time for what they did for cricket. And for us lot, we were all locked down and could watch it. And it's like, great, we can't do anything, but we've got some normality in our lives. And then to not offer that back without an explanation is disgusting. And why they didn't ring me and Rich and say, none of the players want to go. Do you fancy a couple of T20s? I tell you, I'd have been on that flight. Would have got absolutely stuffed, but it would have been a good day. Now, it's interesting where we go from here, but I'm going to throw a name into the hat. There's a man coming back from Pakistan. Who former player is coming back to Birmingham, and he's Wasim Khan, who was the chairman of the PCA, did an excellent job by all accounts, very difficult job, and I think he should be considered. He's got completely the right CV to do that job.
And he fits another thing for me as well, in that the ECB is playing with fire at the moment with the way they've mishandling to an extent the Yorkshire situation with Azim Rafiq. So I don't think it'd be a bad thing either if they did go down that route, because there needs to be a bit of a root and branch review, doesn't it, of sort of, you know, ethnic minorities, etc., playing cricket in this country. Because the studies come out recently. I think it's one coach in county cricket, not many board members, and not many players.
No.
So that's that. He certainly sounds like he's got the right CV to me.
They've got to get rid of that glass ceiling. It's just not right. What's happening?
We don't need another old white bloke, basically. I think that's what we're saying. I think most things will be better off if we get rid of that.
Well, don't you think most of the time it's the person that's important? It's not sometimes what's on the. I know we're talking about Wasim Khan having an excellent CV. That's not the point. But it's about the person being relatable, on point, on trend to what is relevant at the time. And that's, you know, we don't do politics, but quite often the politicians that do really well are the ones that people relate to in some form or shape or way. And, you know, same with people getting big in different streams of life. It's just how it is. Is Ian Whitmore, whatever his name is he relatable to the predominant people of England watching cricket? Probably not. He's probably not the right guy for it.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. It's simple as that, isn't it? As we go forward, it's an opportunity for ECB to just change some things around. And, you know, the best organisations, the most resilient ones, are the ones that can actually criticise, analyse, etc., and change from within rather than being forced to change. And if the ECB can do that, then there's a future for this setup. If not, it needs to be ripped down and started again. But hey, that's what it is. Annoyingly, we've not heard any more about the Ashes. Obviously, it sounds like this week it's going to come to a head. We're going to get some decisions, aren't we? It does seem like the Australian government is looking to allow a little bit of leniency, even though they're trying to make out they're not. but by giving some facility. I think the Yarra Valley, there's a facility, a spa hotel down there that the families, etc., could go and quarantine in and be based in there. It does also sound that if Western Australia and Queensland don't change their situations, then there might not be any test matches at the Gaba or the new WACA, whatever it's called. So it'd be an interesting setup here. We certainly don't need help, or whatever he wants to call it, from Tim Paine, who has played 4 test matches Australia have in the last since COVID struck, all at home, and England have played about the most. Is it 13 or 18? And a few away as well. So yeah, thanks Tim. Shut up. So that's where we are with that. Big news as well, like we just mentioned earlier. Ben Stokes probably won't be touring because he's sorting his finger out, so it's going to be at least 4 weeks of rehab before he gets anywhere. So it's getting too tight for that. I can't see that happening. Sam Curran's pulled out of the IPL and the World Cup because of a lower back injury. He's been replaced by his brother Tom, and Reece Topley's been called up into the travelling party for the World Cup, which starts soon. Talk amongst yourselves. It starts on the 17th of October with Oman against Papua New Guinea in the sort of pre-qualifying, if that makes sense, whatever you want to call it. But the 2 groups, isn't it, first, before it goes into the super bit.
So are we confident the Ashes goes ahead? What's the feel in the UK?
Yeah.
The feel out here is that it's happening. Tim Paine will go ahead with or without you, Joe. Idiot.
He's going to play on his own. Paine is.
He is. No one wants to play with him, mate. See you at the Gabba. But the way it's looking at here, Sydney have just made, or New South Wales, they've just made big changes around their COVID-19 response and opening things back up. So without knowing what's going to happen, it appears they're going to be very on point to be able to do it. Victoria's struggling. Western Australia is in its own world and doesn't want to be in of anything. So you might end up with a bit of Sydney, maybe a bit of Tasmania where there's no COVID, and a bit of Queensland where there's a tiny outbreak. Yeah,
I mean, there's talk of Canberra and Tasmania hosting, which would be the first ever Ashes either state has hosted. I mean, Tasmania used to always get the warm-up game against Australia A, didn't they? Yeah. Which was the start of your Ian Bell year. That was the game where he scored runs in that warm-up against Tasmania. I remember sitting in my place at the time in Queensland going, oh my God, Bell's playing. He's good. He's back. Aussies are in trouble. But yeah, it's going to be an interest. I think it will. I think speak both where it feels like it will, but I think it's going to be interesting what the squad will be, because it all depends on quarantine. If the players coming from the World Cup have to be delayed, we might have to consider having other players in the squad that can accommodate some of the cricket before those guys are available. So it could be, instead of like a 16 or 18 man travelling party, we could be talking a 22, 24 man party, including those guys coming from the World Cup, depending on who they are.
And it will probably be split. They'll have the squad, and then they'll have reserves completely separated from the main touring squad that they can pull in case there's some sort of outbreak.
Which would make a lot of sense, yeah, because you'll kind of have the World Cup players, and I can't think exactly who they are, but there'll be a few from the World Cup, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you could have some reserves as well as your main touring squad, couldn't you? So
yeah,
it's going to be complicated.
Some of the senior players have come out and said we are definitely going. Yeah, Stuart Broad being one of them. But then you also have on the flip side, Joe Root categorically saying we're not going to go if we take a week inside. We're not going to diminish the Ashes. So you've got this balance at the moment that nobody's 100% sure. I wouldn't want to see a horrendously weak England side go out there. But it depends, because if you actually look through that side, there's only probably 2 or 3 players that are irreplaceable. You know, that top order Root.
Yeah.
You've got to have Root going. Yeah. That's critical. The rest of them are a bit hit and miss. So, you know, they're looking over the shoulders to see whether or not they're available. Now, I don't know if there's a Lions tour meant to be happening as well. I think potentially there is. And there has been some talk about taking an enlarged Lions team potentially, so that they're available in the area in case, and again, separate. So that might be an option that they get round certain things. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think it'll go ahead. I hate to say it's more about money and the rest of it. I think where there's a way, there's a will. And I think a lot of players, especially the ones getting near the end of their careers, definitely want to go out and play in the Ashes.
Yeah. And we've got some younger players as well knocking about the squad again, haven't we, all of a sudden? So there'll be some players that would desperately want to make sure that they nail down spots. If the likes of Hasib Hamid, for example, or, I don't know, Ollie Pope decided not to go, they might find themselves pushed out if someone comes in and, if Harry Brook comes in and takes his chance, or somebody else, then it's a tricky one, isn't it? Tom Haynes, potentially. There's going to be some young blokes that haven't got the families yet, etc., that want to get on this plane. And we have had a break since the end of the season as well. So especially the ones not going to the World Cup, there's players that have been able to actually just, decompress and just get away from things. So, they won't be too fussed about spending a winter in Australia.
And then you look again, and some of our multi-format players like Wokes and that didn't go IPL.
Yeah.
They purposefully, and I don't know whether it was because the Ashes is coming and the World Cup's coming, and I ain't going to get a break before March. So maybe they've taken their R&R now, knowing full well that this is a possibility. So maybe it's just, a storm in the teacup, and they were always intending to go, but they just wanted to push to get an upgrade in the holiday resort. Who knows?
We could have used these guys in negotiations for other stuff, couldn't we? Yeah. Because it does seem like potentially they might have got more out of it by taking this stance, like Tully says, with the intention that they're probably always going to try and honour this tour. But let's get the best possible outcome for our setup and our families, etc. Before we commit to everything. So fair play to him in that way. But there's plenty to talk about. Like I said, World Cup round the corner, Rob. Ashes, I would imagine we'll get an announcement very, very soon. And with that announcement, I wouldn't be surprised if we get the squad quickly afterwards. However that squad looks, and we'll have to look into the Lions thing. I hadn't really, that wasn't on my radar, so that would be really, really helpful if there was a Lions tour somewhere in the vicinity. Even if it was just Southern Hemisphere somewhere, anyway, it'd be ideal, wouldn't it? So stick them on an island somewhere with a cricket pitch. So
3 players that's going to be in Australia during the Ashes. Just saying, Harry Brook, Ecb Mahmood, Ben Duckett, all signed up for the Big Bash. Brook's off to go to play for Hobart, Sakib's at Sydney, Ben Duckett playing at Brisbane Heat.
Love it. I love that Duckett's got a game over there. I think the other 2, for me, should be in the squad, in an Ashes squad. I think Brook's over somebody like a Zach Crawley. Duckett, he's a multi-format player. He also can play, he can take the gloves if needs be in a pinch. And when you're touring, you might need that in age of COVID.
Doesn't do any harm, does it?
So I wouldn't say Duckett's there already or should be in the England squad necessarily, but he's a hell of a cricketer. And he wouldn't be a bad bloke to have somewhere nearby if all hell broke loose.
Yeah, I think this is what you're going to see. It's quite interesting what's going on over there. So Hales plays at Sydney in the Sydney Thunder, but they've also got Sam Billings, also being coached by Trevor Bayliss. So it's almost like they're bringing in some foreign safety blankets that they can get because they know there's going to be COVID. They need quality players that can come and just kind of hit the ground running as soon as they get on it. But I think the fact that Ecb Mahmood is the guy that's been picked up probably shows he's more valuable than what England see him as at the moment. And the rest of the world is kind of going, wow, that guy's pretty good. He bowls fast. He can swing it both ways, attacks the stumps, takes wickets, white ball, red ball, orange ball in the pavilion after the games. He can do a bit of all of it. So
he's close.
Why wouldn't we take him on the Ashes? Why wouldn't we?
Well, we should.
He's close. He's in my squad, whatever that means to anybody.
We should. If you look at England, not too long ago, we had 3 out-and-out firebrands. 2 of them are now injured. We've lost Archer, we've lost Stone. We've only got Mark Wood, and as we know, he doesn't always keep fit. And to me, the next cab off the rank to do that job was Ecb Mahmood. I think he'll be in the England squad. I hope he is.
I do as well. I mean, that's something I'd love to have a good chat about that. Even before the squad comes out, if we can make some predictions. I like to see how right or wrong we can be. So I'd love to be able to do that at some point soon, because there's 1 or 2 other names I think are on the periphery that would make sense. Like the Chris Tremletts of this world back in the day. Who's the fits for him? Who's the biggest comparisons to that type of bowler? So it'd be interesting to see who they do go for, because there's a couple of names out there I think could be interesting.
But there's definitely some interesting jigsaw puzzle pieces to be replaced. As you discussed earlier, you've got 2 all-rounders going out. One of them is spinner. They're not easy to replace. Who's going to come in and do those jobs? We're not blessed with a vast amount of quality top order batsmen who can come in and do a Ben Stokes job, let alone bowl as well. So getting the balance is going to be difficult. Will they do something daft and go for Don Best because he can hold a bat a bit? over someone like Leach who can bowl better. You know, neither of them are ideal. I'd always go for the one that can bowl better, personally.
Should be, but it's all about that balance, isn't it? So it comes back to that same
but
thing.
Again, they might be so fearful of the fact that they haven't got Stokes runs, they haven't got Ali's runs, that they pick up half and half, and it doesn't do either job.
Yeah. When England have been at their worst, it's because they're trying to fill not the best 11, they're just trying to fill the balance. Then this is not the best spinner, but we'll get him in because he can bat a bit more. Woakes helps us with that balance because he's a seam bowler that can bat at 7 at a push. 8, he's one of the best in the world. So that does help hugely. And then it potentially opens up a spot down at 10 or 11 for a Parkinson, for an Amar Verdi perhaps, or a Jack Leach. But they don't seem overly fond of Leach, it seems to me. Otherwise, he would have been in the team a bit more recently, I think.
It's a phenomenon England have had since the 90s, looking for the next Botham, the next player to balance that side, whether it was Alex Stewart or Flintoff finally came through and did it. I'm still doing it now. We've lost Stokes. We've got to get someone that can bat and bowl with it. I mean, one advantage we do have is that of our seamers that have bowled well this season, Robinson and Overton can both bat. Okay, they're not better than number 8s, but they're both good number 8s. So that does give you some balance and hopefully enables you to perhaps pick a spinner that can bowl better rather than a bit of a horses for courses type.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. Plenty.
If you ever ask me, how do you win a game of cricket? That's the start of the conversation you always start with.
20 wickets.
20 wickets. How do you take 20 wickets? And we know that's hard in Australia. We know it's hard on the seamers, English seamers in Australia. It's hard on English spinners in Australia. So a little bit of work to do to try and work that out. Just one more point to finish on. T20 World Cup, we spoke on, starts the 17th of October. Big lockdowns on positive coronavirus tests. Anyone that's positive has got a 10-day ISO period before they're allowed to reintegrate back into the tournament away from all the teams.
Wow.
Obviously, to try and control what's going on, everyone in the crowds have got to be in masks. What are your thoughts living in a freedom country like the UK?
Don't ask me, mate. Don't ask me. We're going to have a nightmare over winter again, but just because everyone's just gone back to normal because the government doesn't really give a crap. They just want everything to be normal. It's fine. It's carry on. I think whatever you can do to make sure you get a safe hosting of a tournament. The players have to be fit. The players have to be available to play. So do whatever you have to do that the players will agree to in order to get the competition on. It's not that traumatic for spectators. If you want to go to the ground and watch it, it's a small payoff. It's really not that big a deal, surely.
I would say so. I don't think it's that big a deal.
Do you want the game or not? As simple as that. If that's what they say you've got to do to have the game on, then do it. If you don't want to do it, don't go to the game. As simple as that. So,
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
We're all in agreement.
Oh Christ, we've agreed. Rob was thinking, well, let's end on a real dispute.
It's taken a while to get to it, but that's awesome, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, my friend. It's the first time I've spoken to you.
Few years.
2 or 3 years. I did see you briefly on your 50th. When you were drunk, someone held a phone up and you were drinking in the dark.
Can't have been me.
But no, it is good. It's good to see you, my friend. Good to see you as well, Rich. I haven't got anything else to add. I'm at that point. I'm not really engaged in the IPL. I'm just waiting for the T20 World Cup. I'm holding it out. I'm going, let's get stuck into that because that's fun. The IPL to me, I struggle to.
I think at the moment, I think IPL is just a victim of its timing, though, isn't it? I think if you're in India, you're loving it. But the fact that it was delayed and it's still going on, it's not usually in our calendar at this time of year. We're not thinking about it. So it's just gone off our consciousness, hasn't it? So, there'll be 1 or 2 bits, I'm sure, when the competition ends, we can cover off. But it hasn't really struck on our radar because it shouldn't be here. Obviously it is, and we know why. But yeah, no disrespect to the competition, but it's just like you said, Rob. It's just not on the radar, is it? And it doesn't help that we're looking ahead already. On the horizon is Ashes, and just below that, World Cup. How can you be looking at the IPL? No disrespect to it, if you've got the World Cup and then the Ashes coming up as an England fan.
Yep, I agree.
Totally
I
agree,
agree. We'll enjoy this one because it's celebrating the Bears, celebrating Torley being on the podcast. It's a championship win. The Bears are in town. It's a Bob Willis Trophy. It's good conversation. So thank you so much for listening, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, leave a big like. Check us out on YouTube. You've got Torley in his absolutely spanking Warwickshire top. A little bit bright, but also there's a little cute teddy bear if you're into that sort of thing. We'll catch you guys next time.